بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأولين الآخرين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم. اللهم افتح علينا مفتوح العارفين، فقهنا في الدين، علمنا التأويل، واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل يا رب العالمين. آمين. نتكلم معكم اليوم عن الجمع. تكلمنا في الدرس الماضي عن قصر الصلاة، والآن نتكلم عن جمع الصلاة.
Today we will speak about the joining of prayers, after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutations upon Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it says today we're going to discuss, after having discussed shortening of prayers last week, today we're going to discuss the joining of prayers.
وقد قلنا أن الجمع أن للمسافر سفرا طويلا يجوز له الجمع والقصر.
As we mentioned, that a person who travels we'll call it a long distance, or we discussed the distance previously, he is permitted to shorten and join his prayers.
أما إذا كان غير مسافر فلا يصح له القصر، لكن يصح له الجمع فيما إذا كان جمع المطر جمع تقديم، أو كان مريضا على قول بأن يجمع جمع تقديم أو جمع تأخير.
As we mentioned, it's not permissible for anyone who is not a traveler, specifically if he's considered a traveler, to shorten his prayers. However, there are circumstances where one is permitted to join prayers if you are not a traveler as well. And those are in two circumstances. The first circumstance I'd mentioned was if there is rain, and then there's obviously conditions with this. And the second circumstance, and that's not upon the strongest position in the Shafi'i school, it is upon a weak position, which says that you can join prayers because of illness. And again, there's conditions with that, but that's not the official position of the school. Official position of the school is with regards to rain, but illness, again, that's a weaker position in the school.
فيتبين أن القصر خاص بالمسافر لا غير.
So from this we can summarize that a shortening of the prayers is peculiar only to the one who is considered a traveler.
فإن كان غير مسافر أو سميناه غير مسافر فلا يصح له القصر في حال من الأحوال.
So if he is not a traveler, or we don't call him a traveler, then he is not permitted to make shortening of the prayers in any way or form.
ذكرنا الدرس الماضي إنه لو خرج من العمران أو من سور البلد إذا كانت البلد مسورة، أو من العمران إذا كان هناك عمران، هنا يبدأ السفر.
As we mentioned in the previous lesson, that when is someone considered a traveler is when he leaves what is known as the Umran, which is the area which is built up and people live, or a scenario where the city has a wall and you pass that wall. So the two scenarios where once you pass that boundary, either a walled city passing the wall, or a built up area where the people no longer live. If there is no wall, then you are considered a traveler, as we mentioned last week.
ولا بد أن يكون السفر مرحلتين فأكثر.
And here we mention again that the journey is intended destination should be more than 2 days journey or long.
طيب إذا أنا قصدت موضعا معلوما، مثلا أنا أريد أن أذهب من هنا إلى جوهانسبرغ مثلا، أكثر من مرحلتين، وصلت جوهانسبرغ، هل يجوز لي وأنا في جوهانسبرغ الجمع والقصر أم لا؟
No. So, for example, so it gives the example that if I intend to a locality such as a known locality such as Johannesburg, which is well known to be more than the distance that's required, is it permissible for me to perform joining of the prayers and shortening of the prayers if I intend to go to Johannesburg?
نقول إذا دخلت جوهانسبرغ أنت كم ناوي تجلس في جوهانسبرغ؟
Again, coming back to the question that was mentioned last week, that now you intended to go to Johannesburg. Now you've arrived in Johannesburg. How many days are you going to stay in Johannesburg, such that you can perform in Johannesburg?
نقول إذا كان الإنسان دخل جوهانسبرغ وأراد يجلس فيها يومين أو 3 أيام غير يومي الدخول والخروج، فهذا يسمى مسافر.
Such that the person who is intending to travel to a locality such as Johannesburg, if you are intending to remain in Johannesburg for 2 days, remaining there, or 3 days, that's excluding the day of arrival and the day of exit, that your stay in Johannesburg is that duration and not longer, then whilst you are in Johannesburg, you are still considered a traveler.
فنقول مثلا قال يا شيخ أنا دخلت جوهانسبرغ يوم السبت وسأرجع إلى بلادي يوم الثلاثاء، نقول تمام، يوم السبت يوم الدخول، يوم الثلاثاء يوم الخروج، عندنا أحد واثنين، هذا يومين، فيكون عندنا يجوز الجمع والقصر في جوهانسبرغ.
such the examples that gives is that when you intend to leave Cape Town and Saturday,
دخل يوم السبت.
you arriving in Johannesburg on Saturday, and then you're going to obviously stay there Tuesday, Sunday, and Monday. You're going to stay there, and then
يوم الثلاثاء.
and then you're going to leave on Tuesday. You arrive Johannesburg Saturday. You're going to stay there full day Sunday, Monday a full day, and you intend and you're going to leave Johannesburg on the Tuesday.
لأن يوم الدخول يوم السبت، يوم الخروج يوم الثلاثاء، وعندنا أحد واثنين، هذا اليومين لا يجوز جمع، لا إشكال فيه.
So if you count it correctly, so the day of arrival is Saturday, the full day of Sunday, that's the one day. Monday is a full day, and then the Tuesday is the day you're leaving. So that those 2 days are not counted, and the 2 days in between is considered you only being there for 2 days in the locality.
طيب قال يا شيخ أنا دخلت يوم السبت دخلت جوهانسبرغ يوم السبت، وسأخرج من جوهانسبرغ يوم الأربعاء، سأرجع إلى بلاد. نقول تمام، يوم السبت يوم الدخول، يوم الأربعاء يوم الخروج، فيكون عندنا أحد اثنين ثلاثة، هذا 3 أيام، أيضا يجوز الجمع والقصر، لا إشكال فيه.
Similarly, Saturday I arrive in Johannesburg, but I remain now. I choose to stay in Johannesburg Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Those are 3 full days. I'm staying there. I'm leaving now on the Wednesday. Right? In this scenario, you are still considered a traveler, and therefore you can still make jam' and qasr.
قال يا شيخ أنا دخلت يوم السبت وسأرجع يوم الخميس. نقول تمام، يوم السبت يوم الدخول، يوم الخميس يوم الخروج، عندنا أحد اثنين ثلاثة أربع، 4 أيام غير يومين دخول، إذن لا يجوز لك لا جمع ولا قصر في جوهانسبرغ.
Similarly, so if we arrive in Johannesburg on Saturday, so that's the day of arrival, and then Monday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I've decided to stay. So 4 full days I'm remaining. That's more than 3 days, right? And then I'm leaving on the Thursday. So in this scenario, you've decided to remain in Johannesburg for duration longer than 3 days, excluding the day of arrival and exit. Therefore, you cannot make jam and qasr because you're no longer considered a traveler.
واضح هذا المسألة؟ المسألة هذه واضحة؟
I'm trying to say
that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days. Even on the fourth day. Was it all 4 days, or is it only the first 3 days yourself and later?
هو يسأل يعني هو يفهم كأنه يعني عند قصته يعني 4 أيام فيجوز لك يعني 3 أيام ولكن
لا، بمجرد أن يدخل جوهانسبرغ وهو ناوي، ودخل يوم السبت وهو ناوي أن يرجع من جوهانسبرغ، أن يخرج من جوهانسبرغ يوم الخميس، نقول بمجرد الدخول خلاص أنت الآن صرت مقيم في جوهانسبرغ، ما يحصلك لا تجمع ولا تكسر.
So it's important to understand in the scenario here. So the question is that if I understand correctly, is that when you intending to stay 4 days, right? But can you then therefore make for 3 days and the 4th day you cannot? No. So what happens is that your intent from the outset when arriving in Johannesburg is to remain for 4 days. So because the moment your journey ends in when you enter the city, right? Now you arriving in the city, that's what you considered you're considered a resident of that city temporarily, and you are not considered a traveler. Obviously, on the way there you're a traveler, but when you arrive in Johannesburg, because you're intending 4 full days remaining there, right? You are no longer considered a traveler. The moment you arrive in the city, you can no longer perform jam and qasr. As opposed to if you're intending 3 days, then you're considered. So it's about your intent that the moment you arrive, it's not about 3 days and the 4th day. It's about when I intended that place from the outset, I intended 4 days. The moment I enter, I'm no longer considered a traveler. I have to make complete my salah as normal. Understand? Like Saturday morning, for example. Okay. يعني يغادر كيب تاون الساعة 6 نعم صباحا ودخل وصل لجوهانسبرغ الساعة 8 مثلا 2 ساعتين فقط. هل يعني نحسب جميع اليوم لأنه يعني لا يحسب؟
هو دخل متى جوهانسبرغ؟
بعد ساعتين.
جميل. دخل في الليل ولا بالنهار؟
نهار. صباحا.
ما دام إنه دخل في اليوم هذا يوم الدخول.
As long as you've entered during the day and not during the night, if you entered during that day is not considered at all. The entire day is excluded.
سواء دخل في أول اليوم أو في آخر يوم، المهم إنه دخل في النهار، في النهار.
As long whether you enter in the beginning of the day or you enter just before the end of the day, that day is considered the day of arrival.
طيب عندنا كذا. طب عندنا مسألة أخرى، وهي مسألة لو إنسان مثلا ذهب بريتوريا. لماذا ذهبت بريتوريا؟ قال عندي معاملة مثلا بطلع الجواز الباسبورت هذا مثلا في بريتوريا مثلا. طيب كم تحتاج يوم؟ قال لا أدري، ربما يكون يوم، يومين، 3 أيام، حسب المعاملة هناك في بريتوريا.
So in the scenario Said is sketching now, this is a different issue, right? Yeah, Said mentions, for example, and he mentions specifically Pretoria because that's where Home Affairs is, right? So if you are a non-resident, you have to renew your passport and you have to go to Home Affairs, right? So now he says that I intend to go to Pretoria. Why? To get my passport. But when I go to Pretoria, what happens? We don't know how long it's going to take. So is it going to take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? I don't know. I have a specific locality that's far away. I'm going to, yes, but the duration of my stay is unknown depending upon the need and how my face works that day, whether they're happy or not.
طيب ذهب الأخ إلى بريتوريا، جاء عند المعاملات هذه حق الباسبور جوازات، قال لصاحب الجواز تمام تعال في الغد. فجاء الغد وقال له تعال في الغد، وجاء الغد قال تعال بعد يومين، جاء بعد يومين، وهو يؤخره وهو لا يدري متى تنتهي المعاملة.
Now, and again, Said sketch the scenario is that he arrives in Johannesburg wanting to renew his
بريتوريا.
passport. And then what happens is he comes there in the morning and says, okay, come tomorrow, we'll have your passport ready. Comes tomorrow, the passport's not ready. He said the person working at Home Office says, come tomorrow. And then he comes the next day, passport is not ready. Come tomorrow. And this continues and continues. And he doesn't know when this waiting period and delays are going to end.
فهو في كل يوم أو كل يومين متوقع أنه ينتهي ويرجع إلى بلده.
So what's important here is that every single time he goes back, he expects that the following day, right, which is a single day away, he's expecting for this transaction to complete. So he's not expecting to complete in 2 weeks' time. He's expecting, he says to them the next day. It's the next day. Every time it's a short period that's expecting for him to be completed and to be able to return home.
فنقول يجوز له الجمع والقصر إلى 18 يوما غير يومي دخول وخروج.
In this scenario, and this is a very specific scenario, is that he mentions that because he's expecting every single day his work to be completed, but it doesn't get completed, he is permitted to shorten and join his prayers for 18 complete days, excluding day of arrival and day of exit. Right? So day of arrival is not included. Day of exit is not included. 18 full days he can continue to join and shorten his prayers as long as he's being told every single day that he's gonna get the action, everything's gonna be completed the next day, the next day, the next day.
بعد 18 يوما لا يجوز لا جمع ولا قصر خلاص.
Once that entire period has expired, now he's remained there for an entire 18 days. Now, as moment he reaches that 18th day, he now no longer can perform jam and qasr.
هذا لأن كل وقت يتوقع أنه سينتهي المعاملة.
And it's important to understand that the reason behind this is that every day and every period is an expectation that these transactions that's going to happen over there is going to be completed. It's an important point. That's very important to understand.
لكن لو جاء عند المعاملة مثلا وقال له هذا صاحب المعاملة هذا تحتاج إلى وقت، تعال بعد يعني تعال لي بعد أسبوع، وهو نوى أن يجي في بريتوريا أسبوع، خلاص نقول ما دام نوى يجي أسبوع لا يجوز له لا جمع وقصر من حينها.
As we mentioned before, if the intention here is that every day if it could be potentially be concluded. Said mentions a scenario now. Now you go to the Home Affairs. The gentleman or the lady who works at Home Affairs says, only after a week it will be completed. Stay here for a week. The scenario is very different now. They're saying to you, you're going to stay a week. You're going to stay a full week. Now, in this scenario, because the expected duration is known, now you cannot make jam and qasr because it's more than the period.
واضح المسألتين. طيب.
Everyone understand the difference between the two cases?
ثم يقول ماذا؟ ويجوز للمسافر أن يجمع.
نعم. سؤاله يعني له خرج للمعاملة تجارة وأي شيء، ولكن هو يتوقع أنه سينتهي بعد 3 أيام، ثم بعد 3 أيام يعني هناك حاجة يعني بالتأخير، يعني صار يعني يوم رابع كذا، يعني هل نفس الحكم؟
نقول ماذا هو مثلا كان سيد غالبا يومين أو 3 أيام وسأرجع، لكنه بعد ذلك جلس إلى 4 أيام، ليس أنه في حاجة يتوقعها، لا هو زاد بعد ذلك، فنقول بمجرد أن يجاوز 4 أيام خلاص ما يجوز له لا جمع ولا قصر.
هل هناك حاجة يعني نفس العمل يعني يتأخر بسبب يعني هناك حاجة في العمل؟
هو أول كان
3 أيام
3 أيام بعدين قال له
ما ينتهي من العمل يعني حصل شيء.
احتمال يكون في الغد يرجع
نعم.
أو بعد غد،
نعم.
ما دام في حاجة يتوقع قضاءها فله أن يجمع إلى 18 يوما.
So in the scenario where you are intending to stay and there's no need for there's no you're not the extra day you're staying. So the question is, if I have work for 3 days, and then on the third day it becomes apparent to me that that something happened and I have to stay an extra day. Why are you staying that extra day? Are you staying that extra day for no reason, or is there a need that you expect to be completed within a day? So if there's a need that you expect to be completed within an extra day, then the same ruling applies that now you can continue making qasr and jump because remember it's a need that is going to be expected to be completed within a single day or 2 days. So that will permit you. But if you intend that no, I'm just staying because I want to stay an extra day, the moment you're just staying an extra day because you want to go to the shops, for example, you are no longer permitted to make qasr and jump because it's not the scenario we mentioned before. It's not a need that can potentially be completed. Rather, you're just staying extra.
المهم أن لا يكون في تلاعب.
It's important to understand that it's not you important that you understand that you mustn't play with these rulings. That there's an actual need.
ما هو يقول أنا 3 أيام يومين وسأرجع، هو يعرف أنه سيء أسبوع كامل، هذا تلاعب ذا ما يصح لا جمع ولا قصر.
Now, so for example, a person says that, yeah, maybe I think I'm probably going to return after 3 days, but in reality, he knows he's actually going to stay for a week. So he's really just playing with his mind. In reality, he knows he's going to stay for 4 days. He can say to himself he's staying 3 days, but it's actually what intending. So it's about your intent, and therefore you're not permitted to.
نعم. هل عندي سؤال قبل ما نبدأ الدرس؟
Another question.
تفضل، أنا الظهر وقت علينا.
Can you get and travel at the same time? I do. So I mean, for example, if you go to, let's say you go to Johannesburg, right? You stay in Johannesburg. Right? You stay as you're a resident in Johannesburg. No, no, you travel to Johannesburg. Yeah, okay. Right. And then from Johannesburg, you know, let's say you ride in from the then you go there. Oh, okay. Yes. Right? You now travel again. Yes. نعم اوكي طيب. لما سؤال يعني هو يسافر لجوهانسبرغ، يعني هو يكون مسافر في جوهانسبرغ، هل وسافر من جوهانسبرغ الى مكان مرحله بعيده اكثر، هل يعتبر هذا سفر جديد كانه يعني مسافر
هو أولا ذهب جوهانسبرغ وكان مسافر أصلا،
مسافر
لأن يجوز ما في إشكال، ما دام حتى لو كان أقل مرحلتين، مثلا أنا جبت جوهانسبرغ سأجلس فيها مثلا يومين ثم سأذهب إلى بريتوريا أظن أقل، أيضا يجوز لي جمع قصر في جوهانسبرغ ويجوز لي جمع قصر في بريتوريا، لا إشكال في
So
ذلك.
it's permissible, yes. You can be a traveler and a traveler again because you're traveling again.
وضح أول شيء إنه ذهب جوهانسبرغ سيجلس فيها هو مسافر،
نعم. So
ثم ذهب المكان سواء كان مرحلتين أو أقل مرحلتين أيضا يجوز له الجمع
نعم. So
قصر.
if you in the one scenario, so it mentions that if you are intending to go to Johannesburg and whilst in Johannesburg you are still considered a traveler, as we explained, your 3 days or less, right? Excluding the end of arrival and exit, then you are considered a traveler in Johannesburg. And similarly, when you travel to Pretoria, you're still considered a traveler. وإذا كان يعني مقيما.
أما إذا كان مقيم في جوهانسبرغ أصبح مقيما ثم سيذهب مثلا إلى بريتوريا وسيرجع إلى جوهانسبرغ فلا يجوز له الجمع والقصر.
إذا كان أقل من
مكان مرحلتين نعم.
إذا كان أكثر.
فأكيد يجوز هذا.
So Said mentions that, for example, now in the scenario where you become what you call in Arabic a muqim, or a temporary resident, we'll call it here. For example, you're staying 4 days in Johannesburg, excluding day of arrival and exit. Now, remember, the moment you arrive in Johannesburg, you cannot make qasr and jam, right? So Pretoria, for example, is less than the distance that's required for journey. So then you cannot make because you're not traveling far, right? However, if you're traveling to Durban, for example, and you're in Johannesburg as a muqim, yes, you can traveling to Durban. It's again, it's considered like a new journey, right? But obviously, then you consider the distance of the, if you are considered a muqim, a resident temporarily in that locality. It's important to differentiate between two scenarios.
هذا إذا كان ذاهب إلى بريتوريا ثم سيرجع لجوهانسبرغ فنقول لا يجوز الجمع والقصر إذا قلنا أنه مقيم. أما إذا كان لا هو مقيم في جوهانسبرغ سيذهب إلى بريتوريا من بريتوريا سيذهب إلى دوربن أو إلى كيب تاون نقول إذا يجوز الجمع والقصر في بريتوريا.
Exactly as I said, for example, is that if you are considered a temporary resident in Johannesburg, right, then if you're going to Pretoria, Pretoria is a short distance, right, not a long journey. Therefore, you cannot make jam and qasr in Johannesburg because you're going to return back to Johannesburg. However, if you are considered a temporary resident in Johannesburg, because you're 4 days staying there, but you intend to go to Pretoria and from Pretoria to Durban, then yes, you can make jam and qasr the moment you leave Johannesburg because now your journey is far, right? So then you can make now. Hope that clarifies the concept. Yes. Salam.
If you're a traveler and you're going to a location on a vessel, and the vessel's now moving, and you're going to be on that vessel 3 days. The vessel sometimes it moves, you don't know if it's going to move 3 days around the same location, or then moves continuously into a different direction. So you could be working in one location 3 or 4 days, but then you're moving again to a next location. But the vessel is continuing.
Is the vessel at sea or is the vessel
at sea, not
docked? It's never docked.
It comes into port maybe twice in that 30 days.
Okay. So for example, when you say to the vessel is stationed, you don't intend by that is stationed at Durban's port, for example.
No. Out at sea.
Out at sea. Okay, but it will just be paused in the ocean over there. So your question is that
It will be moving. So for the 30 days I'm on the vessel, am I a traveler or not?
نعم اوكي نعم سؤالك بالنسبه للسفينه يعني هو يعمل ولو ما عمل على السفينه وهذا السفينه لم يصل الى البلد بس ما زال يعني في البحر يعني فهذه الثلاثه ايام او 30 ايام يعني كما قال يعني هل هو يعتبر مسافر وان كان يعني لا يدري هل يمكث في هذا المكان 3 ايام 4 ايام
ما فهمت السؤال.
هناك هو يعمل في السفينه والسفينه لم يصل الى البلد ما زال في البحر
تمام.
نعم طيب وهو يعرف أن هو سيجلس على هذه السفينة يعني مدته شهر كامل
تمام.
ولا يدري أين يمكث 3 أيام هنا 4 أيام هنا هكذا هل
هو
يعتبر
يعني هو يتنقل في السفينة لم تدخل في البلد.
لم يتصل في البلد
تمام ما دام انه هو في السفينة وما زال هو يسمى مسافر انه يتنقل من مكان لمكان فهو ما زال مسافر يجوز له الجمع والقصر.
نعم so if you understand your question correctly where you remain on the vessel and the vessel never docks in port right your vessel is remaining moving from one locality to the next locality you are as long as you are considered a traveler you are permitted to make jam and qasr because you consider a travel even if it is for 30 days
لا يلزم السفينة حتى ممكن أنا ممكن أكون مسافر شهر شهرين إلى سنة أذهب إلى منطقة يومين تجارة ثم أذهب إلى منطقة ثانية يومين تجارة ثم منطقة ثالثة يومين تجارة ثم منطقة رابعة يومين تجارة فأنا أذهب للتجارات إلى أماكن كثيرة مدة سنة كاملة فيجوز لي الجمع والقصر.
Now, so give another scenario. It doesn't have to be on a ship, for example. It could even be you could be traveling on land. I travel from this locality to a locality that's far away for business for a week, not less than a week, and then I travel to another locality, and then I travel to another locality, and another locality, and every time I'm traveling consistently for business, and it could end up being an entire year I'm traveling. I'm permitted to make jam and qasr for that entire year as long as I'm considered, as we said, I'm considered a traveler. As we mentioned that obviously you intend not to stay for more than 4 days, 4 days or more.
حتى لو سنة.
As long as as long as you considered a traveler for the entire year, doesn't matter. You can make jam and qasr for that entire year.
The question is, does the licensing of shortening also in jam apply to Sodai's conduct? So in the use of knowledge, say the driving to Johannesburg, and it's not said to stop in the Soda.
Oh, yes.
So what the one made jam buses is a Mombasa.
نعم سؤاله يعني كما الماضي هو يسأل هو يسافر لدربن مثلا كده ويمر في هذا الطريق على أماكن غير آمنة ويخاف على نفسه من الخروج من السيارة حتى يصلي الجمع القصر مثل الظهر والعصر وهل يمكن له أن يجمع الظهر والعصر
في وقت بعد الوقت المغرب إذا خاف من أن نفسه مثلا.
إذا خاف أي إنسان خاف من خروج من السيارة لخوف على نفسه وهكذا، فلا بد أولا أن يصلي ولو كان في السيارة، ثم بعد ما يصلي في السيارة خرج مثلا أنا وقت العصر الآن دخل، أخاف لو خرجت من السيارة أن يحصل لي عندي ضرر، بس أصلي العصر وأنا في السيارة، إن قدرت من قيام وأتم الركوع والسجود الحمد لله، ما تيسر لي ذلك فأصلي بالكيفية التي أنا أقدر عليها، وبعد أن بعد أن أصل المكان الذي أنا فيه بعد سواء كان في الوقت أو بعد الوقت أعيد الصلاة مرة ثانية.
لكن لا يجوز الجمع القصر الجمع في بعد المغرب.
لا هو كما قلنا إذا كانت هو أصلا عندنا يجوز تقديم وتأخير.
لا، هو سؤاله يعني هل يجوز عن رخصة الجمع والتأخير يعني لو فائدة، لو كان الصلاة فائدة مثلا، يعني في هذه الحالة يعني
أيوه.
كما
هو يصلي أول شيء أداء.
نعم. هو يصلي أداء
أه؟
ولكن طيب.
هو يصلي عن أداء،
نعم.
بعدين لما يصل المكان اللي فيه يقضي اللي فضل. مثلا وصل بعد المغرب يقضي الظهر والعصر.
نعم.
So his question is that mentioned that the scenario was just in the sketch at the game is that you're traveling maybe from Cape Town to Durban and you're passing by a locality where you genuinely fear for your life and your health because sometimes it's a dangerous area and you're intending to perform jump between Dhuhr and Asr. You pass by this area and you cannot get out of the car. You're really, really fearful that stopping the car or pausing the vehicle. So in this scenario, Said mentions that if you genuinely fear for your wealth and your health, or your family, for example, then you must perform it in the vehicle as you can. So if you are able to perform it with standing and all the positions, like for example on a bus, for example, then there's no problem with that. Then your salah is obviously valid because you're performing all the arkan. In a scenario where you can't perform the arkan completely in a small vehicle, right? Now you perform salah not because you perform salah at a necessity. You fear genuinely there's like something happening, and you perform salah as you're driving, or if you can pause the car for a vehicle, you pause and do as much as you can of the arkan, but you do it in its waqt, right? But the question you had was that can you perform that after its waqt? Once the waqt exits, you have to perform it as Dhuhr and Asr. There's no longer considered jam and afterwards because you're just paying it back. Then if you are unable to perform all the arkan whilst when you feared for your life, when you paid during its waqt, you repeat the salah after. When you're able to, when you arrive in Durban, for example, and you feel safe, then you perform the salah over because you were unable to complete the salah in its entirety. While you can't shorten the prayer because you
سؤالي بالنسبة للقصر هل يجوز يعني كان مسافرا
مهم.
وقت الظهر والعصر وكان خايف
يصلي ما دام هو مسافر
نعم.
فيجوز له الجمع والقصر
وهذه
ويصلي في السيارة.
نعم.
وصل إلى المكان اللي وصل اللي هو ما زال مسافرا.
نعم.
إن كان ما زال مسافرا فنقول أيضا يجوز له قضاء الجمع والقصر.
نعم.
يجوز القضاء، ما في جمع أصلا، يجوز له القضاء
نعم.
فيقضي قصر أيضا.
نعم.
فإذا كان وصل إلى مكان أصبح مستوطنا أو مقيما
نعم.
فلا يجوز له لا يجوز له الجمع والقصر.
Now, if you just recall from last week's lesson, it explained that if you miss a salah, for example, and you were permitted to perform qasr salah. For example, now you're driving in the vehicle and you fear for your life, you can perform qasr salah, right? Two rakats because you are a traveler still, even though you're not performing it completely. Then you're going to re-perform the salah after you arrive in Durban, for example, after Maghrib, right? If when you arrive in Durban, are you considered a traveler still or not? If you are considered a traveler still, then yes, you can perform that which you missed as a traveler. You can perform it as Qasr Salah as well, two rakats, because you're still considered a traveler. If you arrive in Durban and you are not considered a traveler, meaning you're intending to stay there 4 days or more, now you longer can perform the missed Salah as two rakats. You have to perform 4 and 4. Is that right?
النساء إذا عندهن سؤال يكتبنا في الواتساب ومحمد رافق يجيب الأسئلة حق النساء.
If the ladies have any questions, then we can just send it on the group.
في
السؤال
أسئلة؟
من
هات السؤال. اقرأ عشان الناس يسمع.
If the question from the ladies is if you go for a 14-day vacation and move within the country you are vacationing in, do you make full or shortened or joint praise? The question is not 100% clear in that is the vacation just the purpose of just to look around the country, or is it are you staying in specific localities?
السؤال بالنسبة لي على ما هو عليه الآن هو مجرد نزهة يعني يخرج بمجرد نزهة أسبوعين كامل
وإذا نقل من مكان إلى مكان ولكن ما زال في البلد هل يجوز يعني السفر القصر والجمع هذه المدة؟
طيب، عندنا السفر قد يكون للنزهة والسفر قد يكون لرؤية البلاد.
Yeah. So Said mentions here, and this is why I asked the question, is that when the question is related to can you before travel, if you're traveling for 2 weeks, can you perform qasr and jam salah? If you're just traveling for vacation, and the question is here like a tourist, Said mentions here that there are two scenarios here. The journey's purpose can be for what is known as a nuzha in Arabic, where it's like what we call a vacation, or your purpose is what is known as ru'yatul bilad, where you are actually just what you call literally sightseeing.
مثلا واحد في هذه البلاد قال أنا أريد أن أسافر إلى تركيا.
Someone, for example, he travels to Turkey and
قال أنا عندي النزهة هي عبارة عن إزالة القدرات النفسانية.
نعم.
هذا المقصود بالنزهة.
So what is the definition? So that we see these two different purposes here. You can either go on so we call a vacation, which is in Arabic is a nuzha, and the actual definition of ulama give is when you are traveling for the purpose of removing this feeling you have of tension and something inside of you that you want to just get rid of, which is exactly what a vacation. That's what the purpose is. You want to travel just to relieve yourself of this irritability and discontentment in your inside of you.
نقول ذهابك إلى تركيا وأنت بهذه النية النزهة إزالة القدرات النفسية اللي عندك هذه يجوز لك الجمع والقصر إذا اجتمعت شروط الجمع والقصر.
So if your purpose is to remove this feeling that you have, then this is what we call a nuzha. That's the purpose of your journey. What we call your vacation. Your intent is to kind of just make yourself feel more comfortable and remove that concern inside of you. If that is your intent of your journey, and all the other conditions of the journey of shortening and joining prayers are found, such as the 4 days, etc., as we mentioned before, then yes, it's permitted for you to join and shorten prayers for this purpose.
واحد ثاني قال أنا ما عندي قدرات نفسية ولا شيء، بس قالوا تركيا بلاد جميلة أريد أذهب حتى أنظر إلى تلك البلاد. نقول هذه النية لا يجوز لك لا جمع ولا قصر.
As opposed to the next scenario. So we mentioned the first scenario is that your intent there is to remove this feeling that you have inside of you, which we'll say as we defined it. Then it's permitted with the conditions of normal jam and qasr, as we mentioned before. The second scenario is your purpose of going to Turkey is simply just what is in Arabic known as ru'yatul bilad, where you are simply just want to go and look at the different things there. You don't have this purpose in you. You just want to look at things. And then if this is your intent, ru'yatul bilad, just going to look and go from place to place just to see different things, then it is not permitted for you to make jam and qasr salah in any way or form. Because your intent here is not our first definition, it's the second definition, which is simply just for the sake of gazing at things.
بمجرد أن تخرج من كيب تاون ولا يجوز لك لا جمع ولا قصر.
The moment you leave Cape Town, you're not permitted to make jam and qasr.
فضلا في تركيا لا يجوز لك.
Let alone if you're in Turkey. So you don't understand that.
وإيش من مقصد يقول حتى يقول عندنا الفقهاء الشافعية يقول هذا مقصد غير صحيح.
So what is the reason ulama say as to why what is known in Arabic as ru'yatul bilad, or we'll say sightseeing, so to speak, that's the only reason you're going? What is the ulama says that the reason why it's not permitted is that what kind of intent is this? This is not.
سافر إلى بلد مثل أنظر إلى البلاد. إيش هذا؟
So you travel to a country simply just to look at the country? What kind of a intent is this?
لا تجعل نفسك مقصد غير صحيح.
Why do you make your intent something which is an intent which is not considered valid?
نعم قال يا شيخ مش قال التفكر في مخلوقات الله. نعم جميل إذا أنت تذهب إلى تلك البلاد لتتفكر في مخلوقات الله سبحانه وتعالى وهذا نيتك صحيحة، نقول لا هذا مقصد حسن ورفيع ولكن الثواب عند الله.
As opposed to if your intent to going to these places is that, for example, I going to Turkey, for example, to look at Allah Ta'ala's beautiful creation so that I can extract lesson from Allah Ta'ala's creation. This is a genuine intent. This is your genuine intent, and this is a valid reason for you to take that journey. If your intent is that, and Allah will reward you for that.
أما أذهب إلى تلك البلاد عشان أشوف الشجرة الفلانية والعمارة الفلانية والحيوان الفلاني ما هذا مقصد الغريب ذا.
So as opposed to if your intent is only to go and look at a specific tree or a structure or animals in a specific animal that you want to look over there, if that's the only thing, just to look at those things, that's not really as opposed to we mentioned if you have a true good intent, then that's not considered a valid reason.
يقول عندنا ترفع يعني تنزه عن مثل هذه الأفكار الغريبة اللي يأتون بها الكفار للمسلمين.
So lift yourself up and free yourself up from these we'll call it touristic ideas, just sightseeing, so to speak, because this is above what Muslims have in their intent. Below what Muslims have in the intent, it's something that the West has introduced to us as to have such low intent of our journey, just to look at things.
سافر للدعوة إلى الله. نعم.
Travel to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
للقاء بالمسلمين، تعرف على مسلمين جدد أخوانك في الإسلام.
To perhaps meet Muslims and your other brothers in another land. This is a valid reason.
لزيارة الصالحين والعلماء جميل.
To visit the pious as well as the ulama.
صحح النية.
Make your intent correct.
حتى يقول عندنا صحح النية قبل عملي.
Then they say that rectify your intent before you act.
نعم. من عنده سؤال تفضل.
Are there any other questions?
The traveler when he comes to the masjid and they're performing full salah, cannot make qasr salah. But now, what if we train, for example, with lower salah, and I didn't make qasr for qasr, time frame.
I'm misunderstanding the question. So you come to the masjid and they're performing which waqt?
Performing duhr salah.
They're performing duhr salah. So they perform salah completely.
But the imam is a resident, and the congregation are resident.
They're performing 4 rakats.
We train the salah.
As 4 rakats.
No. You think I can intend to make our asr
shorten? No. As we're joining. Right. No.
So how is it done? Is it immediately after the salam salah is completed, stand up in a position?
Yes.
Or can we move to another space?
No.
Complete our asr together in another jamaat?
No.
Shorten.
Yes. Okay, I understand. So the question was السؤال بالنسبة إلى هو يأتي إلى المسجد وهناك إمام مقيم الإمام فيصلي الظهر 4 ركعات وهو مسافر. وهل ما هو الطريق بالنسبة إلى الجمع العصر مع هذا الوقت وقصر صلاة العصر؟ هل بمجرد تسليم الإمام يقوم ويصلي ركعتي العصر أم يعني يخرج من هذا المكان ويصلي جماعة مستقلة؟ الإمام يصلي ظهر ويصلي مع ظهر إتماما، ثم يريد جمع العصر مع هذه الصلاة ولكن قصرا. طيب ما هو الطريق؟ هل يعني بمجرد تسليم الإمام يقوم
هو كمل الصلاة
ويقوم مباشرة أم يخرج من هذا المكان الذي كان الذي
كان صلاة
حتى
في نفس المكان يصلي في نفس المكان
ولا يقوم
لا يلزم يرجع يخلف
ومع الجماعة الأخرى. مثلا هناك مسافرون معهم
تمام بيصلون هناك الظهر أو العصر قصر مثلا يصلي معه
هذا أحسن.
أفضل. كل مكان جماعة كان أفضل.
Said mentioned that
كان الصلاة من جنسها.
نعم. ولكن هناك مدة
طبعا بس سيأتي معنا شروط الجماعة هذا الدرس قادم. بس المسألة جاوبها هكذا بنقول له الشروط ستأتي معنا.
نعم. So there are other conditions with regards to joining prayers which we'll mention in the next class. But basically the direct to the question is that, and I'll just clarify the question as well, that someone who come as a traveler to a locality, the imam is performing dhuhr salah 4 rakats. So you're going to perform 4 rakats with the imam because you cannot perform 2 rakats behind a imam who's performing 4. You perform 4 rakats with the imam, and you intend after making dhuhr salah to join your asr salah 2 rakats, right? So how do you perform the salah? So Said mentions that you perform the 4 rakats with the imam, and there's two options you have here. You stand up immediately, and you can perform after the imam makes taslim, says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, wa alaikum assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Then you stand up immediately, and you perform your 2 rakats of asr, right? That's jump immediately. Or, which is actually even better, is that you perform a jama'ah with the other travelers as asr salah shortened. Why? Because when you're standing up alone, you're only performing it individually. As opposed to if you have a group of travelers with you, you can perform. It's better for you to perform it as a jama'ah. That's better. But it's not necessary to do it like that. But we're saying that yes, it would be better for you to perform it as a jama'ah because it's a group, and you perform your 2 rak'ats of asr, and then there's obviously a period you have to make within. You can't delay too long. We'll mention that next week, the other conditions.
ما في أسئلة. طيب ما شاء الله اليوم درس الأسئلة ما شاء الله. ما شاء الله. قل لهم
And this is a
اليوم درس الأسئلة.
this is a class of questions today, mashallah.
أنا عندي سؤال. تفضل. آخر سؤال عشان ما انتهى الوقت. عليكم السلام.
introduced 3 days, and then on the third day, well, for that 3 days now, since it's so I intend to stay there longer than 3 days, so I'm doing shortening and joining plays. But then on the third day, I decide to extend my stay for another day or two. So, no longer point that continuous go there. But what happens to those plays that were did for the last 30 days now? Planning to do those on
No. Okay. طيب هو الذي يعني أراد يعني أن يقام في هذا المكان 3 أيام يعني يعتبر مسافر فال بعد 3 أيام يعني أراد يعني أن يجلس يعني يوم آخر هل وبعدها في يوم الرابع يعني هو يعرف أنه لا يجوز له القصر والجمع ولكن ماذا يفعل بهذه ال3 أيام؟ هل يقضي هذه الصلوات؟
لا عندنا هو أصلا ناوي يدخل هذه البلاد سيد 3 أيام غير يوم يدخل، فهو مسافر. صلى بعد ما كمل 3 أيام قال سأجلس أيضا يوم رابع. نفس الشيء يجلس يوم رابع، ويجوز حتى الجمع والقصر في اليوم الرابع، لكن بعد مجاوزة اليوم الرابع لا يجوز لك لا جمع وقصر. طيب الصلوات الماضية الصلاة صحيحة ولا إشكال في ذلك.
No, it says that the 3 days of salah that you had performed shortened and jump, the salah is valid. There's no need to perform it because you intended when you were going there, you intended there staying 3 days. So your intent was valid. The salah was valid to perform a shortened, and the dispensation was completely in its place. Even on the fourth day, for that matter, as long as you don't complete the fourth day, on the fourth day you can even shorten your praise, because you just added the single day and you didn't intend further than that. As long as you beyond that you don't remain, and after that you would have to start completing your praise. Then this clarifies. The salah was valid. You don't have to repeat it, even though you ended up staying longer.
ما شاء الله. يا سؤال عندنا أحمد رافع وقته. عندهم الآن استراحة. طيب هاي عندنا. هل تحبون الاستراحة في الطعام والشراب أو تحبون الاستراحة في العلم والتعلم؟
Do you prefer to have rest, the break time in eating and drinking, or do you want to have it in knowledge? 12 is in 12 in the even midnight. هل يبدأ اليوم بالمغرب أم يعني بالساعة 12 بالليل؟
اليوم عندنا في الشريعة تبدأ من الفجر إلى المغرب، هذا اليوم، والليل يبدأ من المغرب إلى الفجر.
So Said mentions that according to the Sharia, the day begins with Fajr and it ends with Maghrib, and the night begins with Maghrib and ends with Fajr. Yeah, that's how we calculate it in terms of the Sharia, as opposed to at 12 o'clock, etc.
نعم يكفي والله. هي فاتحة الله يفقهنا في الدين، يعلمنا صلاح شان ظاهر وباطن في الدين، جاء توفيق ما يحب الله يرضاه. اللهم من وفق أهل الخير لا خير وعنهم عليه، وفقنا لكل خير وعنا عليه، زدنا من إفضالك ونوالك ما أنت الأهل، حققنا بحقائق الإسلام والإيمان والإحسان، ورفعنا إلى على مراتب العرفان مع صلاح شان ظاهر وباطن بسر أسرار الفاتحة وإلى حضرة النبي. اللهم صل.
Yeah,